Welcome to Get It Done Entrepreneurs, where we talk with founders of companies who bet on themselves and won. My name is Rich LeBrun, and I am the founder and CEO of LeBrun Advisory Group. You can find us at rlebrun.com. Our mission is to help our clients build wealth through business ownership. Stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest. Our special guest today is Zachary Green. He is the founder of Warrior Enterprises, LLC. Zach is an international best-selling author of Warrior Entrepreneur, which are lessons from the battlefield to the boardroom. Zach and his team will lead you on an unforgettable leadership and team-building experiences. Zach's experiences range from serving as a U.S. Marine Corps infantryman, thank you for that service, to working with Fortune 500 companies pertaining to leadership, strategy, and development. Zach started his company from the trunk of his car and has grown it over to $30 million in sales. He has been selected by the White House to serve as a U.S. delegate at the Global Entrepreneurs Conference. He also testified in front of the House of Representatives of the Small Business Committee. Zach and his family live in Hilton Head Island, and he is part of a Marine Corps recruit depot in Paris Island. Welcome, Zach, to the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and it's really exciting to be a guest.
Well, I've been looking forward to this time, and I'm really interested in learning more about who you are, and so are our listeners. So let's tell me your story. How did you get into business? Was it voluntary? Was it involuntary? Tell us a little bit about how it all came about.
Certainly. So I really had three goals growing up as a young kid in Cincinnati. I wanted to be a U.S. Marine, I wanted to be a firefighter, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. When I was 18, I had to wait till I was 18 because my parents weren't real excited about me joining the Marine Corps. I signed and enlisted in the Marine Corps. Went through, it was a pretty rough experience. Up to that, I hadn't really been challenged in my life. I learned a lot about the warrior traits that I carry on to this day and how to overcome adversity. Ended up getting a college degree in marketing, graduated, did both enlisted in the Marine Corps and then went through the officer program. And then ended up getting out in the 90s. It was just a bad time to be in the military. There was a lot of downsizing, and Clinton was really, trying to right size the military, if you will. And so then September 11th happened, and it really affected me, as it I'm sure affected everybody in our country that was alive at that time. And I decided, I needed to get back in. But I had a wife and a kid, so I did my next dream, which was become a volunteer firefighter. Now, my full-time job then was at Eli Lilly. I was in brand development and marketing, learned a lot about how you build multinational billion-dollar brands. And it's not by selling features and benefits, it's about talking about problems and how you can solve problems. For example, we didn't sell the chemicals that were in insulin. We talked about here's what happens when you have diabetes. Here's all the problems that happen as a result of it being uncontrolled. And if you take this medication, here's how this brand will help you. That really came to a head when I started out as a firefighter and I got lost in a fire. I was working my way down a hallway. I've got 80 pounds of gear on my back. I'm breathing the mask with the air. Can't see your hand in front of your face. And I think I'm going down a hallway, and it turned out I was going into a large walk-in closet. Realized I was trapped. Couldn't find my way out. Obviously, eventually did find my way out, but it was horrifying. And I started talking to a couple other firefighters, and they're literally making fun of me and laughing. They said it happens all the time. I'm thinking, okay, well, here's a problem. I've been trained on coming up with solutions to problems. And I remember this glow-in-the-dark material we used in the Marine Corps and the infantry on the back of our helmets so we could see each other at dark. I thought, what if I could apply that same technology to firefighters? So I worked with a bunch of brilliant physicists and chemists, and we came up with this new molecule that glowed so bright it was like a flashlight and would continue to glow for almost a day or so. I had to put it into a couple different materials like helmet bands and stickers and paints and tool wraps, and started selling out of the trunk of my car on nights and weekends. So full-time job at Eli Lilly in a big, boring, cubicle farm doing pharmaceutical marketing, evenings going from fire station to fire station. And I would knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm a firefighter from Cincinnati. I've got something to show you. Can we go in your bathroom and turn the lights off together?" And if they didn't beat me up, they usually like, "Okay, this stuff's pretty cool." Because I would be focused on the problem, which is, have you ever been in a dark environment like this bathroom? You can't see, you don't know where anything is. And then I pull the glow in the dark material out and I said, well, what about how this would make a difference?
Yeah.
I made $5,000 in 6 months. It was a hobby. My fire chief sat me down and said, Zach, you've got something that literally can revolutionize the fire service. Stop treating it as a hobby. And I remembered a quote from Teddy Roosevelt. He said, when you're faced with a monumental decision, the best thing to do is the right thing. The next best thing to do is the wrong thing. But the worst thing to do is to do nothing. And so I maxed out my credit cards, got a booth at a trade show, literally bought a tent from Walmart with sidewalls held together with duct tape and zip ties. I had cardboard signs. I had a bunch of my firefighter brothers helping me. We booked $100,000 in 3 days. We
No
were probably
kidding.
one of the busiest booths in the show. The problem was, is I had no money left. I had no manufacturing capability because I was doing it literally out of my garage and at my friend's place. I had no way to process those orders, and people start saying, well, Zach, you've got to start returning orders and you got to stop doing this. You know, this is getting to the point where it's almost illegal. And I remembered that drill instructor yelling at me when I was a young Marine at Paris Island saying that mission accomplishment, no matter what you do, you accomplish the mission. You can build the boat when you're on the water. You don't have to wait till the boat's perfect. And I turned around and told them all, in other words, that I probably shouldn't repeat on your podcast, but I'm going to figure this out. And over the next couple
Mhm.
of years, I raised several $1 million in venture capital financing, grew my team, and grew it into about a $30–40 million company over the next couple of years. So that's kind of my journey, my story that gets me to where I am now, that ultimately got into the book of Warrior Entrepreneur, which was my story, your story, and the story of all warriors and what they have in common with entrepreneurship.
That's a fascinating story. And so let's kind of go backwards a little bit. So now you hit that mark, you grew your company, you persevered. But looking back, if you could coach yourself a little bit from in history and backwards in history, are there some things that you saw that you did that you would tell yourself to do differently, knowing what you know today?
I will be perfectly honest, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way. I feel I did the best I could with the information I had at that time. Now, hindsight is 2020. There's lots of things I would do different, and there's some pretty substantial things looking back that I made mistakes, but I believe it was the right thing at the time. Number one, founders make really, really bad CEOs. I don't care what anybody says. The skill set to start a company and grow a company is vastly different than the skill set to run a company. The skill sets of an entrepreneur is innovative, creative, multitasking, high ADHD, if you will. You know, it's funny, it's ADHD when you're in school, it's called multitasking when you get out of school, and it's a great thing. So let me talk about me personally. I hired a great group of people and I didn't listen to them. And I was stubborn. And I said, this is my baby. Nobody knows this better. And I kept trying to do all this stuff. And instead, I was not completing the little stuff. And the little stuff is what gets you. The big stuff's easy. It's all the little things, missing a bill here or there, missing to follow up a customer, missing a quality issue, missing a regulation issue. What came to head for me was when my CFO kept saying, you're getting too many big deals and we're running out of cash. Cash is very different than revenue, and we mistake them. Because you got $1 million sale, which is revenue, does not mean you have $1 million cash basis. You may need to spend $500,000 or $750,000 to get to the $1 million. And what kills you is the cash conversion cycle, the time it takes from when you spend your money to the time that money comes back and you're able to pay all your vendors. And by the way, as an entrepreneur, you pay your vendors usually before you get paid. So what was happening is I'm getting these big $100,000 deals. The bigger the customers, the longer it takes for them to pay, the more challenge. And it's not that they're doing intentionally. Sometimes they do, but sometimes, you know, $100,000 to you and me, that's a lot of money. To them, it's decimal dust, and it just gets lost in the paperwork shuffle. And what was happening is we ran out of cash. And so now all of a sudden, even though I had $1 million in revenue coming in, we were running out of cash. And he basically said we need to go bankrupt in order to reorganize and put everything together. And I had a panic attack. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was on vacation with my family. I remember the phone call. I said, look, I want to go on a trip. Don't bother me unless there's an emergency. And what's he do? He calls me up. And it was my real crucible. And it's something I talk about in my book. And it's something that's very common in the warrior's journey. And that is, as a warrior, you have to have iron sharpens iron. It gets harder and harder. And the harder it gets, the more you get trained for it. And the challenges that you had early on in your career, even though they seemed harder, they were actually easier, but at the time they felt harder because you weren't used to it. You hadn't built that rhino skin and that warrior attitude. But you get to a point where you have your crisis. It could be a drug or alcohol problem. It could be a divorce. It could be, in my case, a failure of a business. It could be a bankruptcy or whatever. And in that abyss, in that crucible, you find your abyss, that rock bottom. And you can choose one of two things. Let the abyss consume you, which happens. People kill themselves. People resort to really dangerous self-destruction. Or you use that as the foundation to build your new castle. And that's what, thank God, I did. And so even though we didn't go bankrupt, we almost did. I fired almost my entire executive team. I resigned as CEO. I hired a CEO. I let him hire a whole new executive team, and I focused more on being the visionary and the founder and the face of the company rather than running the company. I told him, I said, I don't want to know how much money's in the bank, and you hire and fire whoever you want, but I get last say. I want to make sure they fit the culture and the values that the company has. You worry about the details. And that's when the company just absolutely flourished from that point on.
Well, a pivotal moment, and it's very interesting because who would have thought by bringing in too big of customers, right? Typically, you go out there and celebrate as you get this big whale of a customer that actually could send your company into a tailspin. Most people don't really think that way. They get too excited on the flashy object, okay, which was that big sale. But can I handle it? Can I support it? Can I afford it? Great insight.
Well, and that's a great reason why, again, you need to listen. And some of the most important people, especially as you start getting along, are the financial people that can run models and analysis. Because even though you're bringing in $1 million in revenue, you may have additional expenses at $1 million in revenue that you didn't have at 100,000, because you're starting to employ people that what I call are non-revenue generating employees, like HR and like compliance and like some of the administrative type stuff, where we just think sell, sell, sell. Well, to your point, you have to have a plan. And it's important to have a team, listen to the team. And I always say, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. I want to be, and I knew I was doing great when I walked in my board meetings and I was the dumbest, weakest person in the room. I'm like, damn, I did a good job putting this team together.
Good job. Yeah, it's interesting how many times people get caught up in the revenue of their business and they brag about it, they boast about it, and don't look at their books, and they could be losing money, and they don't really look at the cash side, the net profit side, because the revenue is so attractive and exciting. So you already alluded to a couple of good decisions you made. Let's think of something that was a key for you, because you did some good decisions. Obviously, you pivoted, you got out of the way, you hired a CEO. Anything else you would say that was really a good decision to help you get to where you are today?
Yeah, it's recognizing that no one is ever going to do as good job as you do. But if you can hire two people that do 60% of your job, that equals 120%. So sometimes there is a quality and quantity. And again, I go back to these little decisions. I'm really good at the big decisions. I'm good at strategizing, and I can do it very quickly. It was background from my time in the Marine Corps and the infantry, and then ultimately as a firefighter, having to process vast amounts of critical information very quickly, prioritize them, focus on the alligator that's closest to the boat, not all the alligators, take that one out and work on the next one. However, it's the little stuff that kills you. And when you, as the executive, start getting yourself wrapped up with little stuff that maybe the things you like to do or things that you feel are easy, but you haven't delegated and you haven't given people, that is the cumulative I found really starts to weigh on you. And you have to really think about the difference between leadership and management. Very different. Leader is
Yeah.
inspiring others. It's using values and intangibles, where management is doing things right, checking the list, making sure it's done. You as the founder and the people that are listening to this podcast need to think more as leaders and hiring managers, where sometimes they act like managers, but they think they're leaders.
Yeah, you have some really great insight. Really appreciate you being on the show sharing this. I love the statement, hire two 60%ers and that equals 120%. I think that's a phenomenal aha moment for me to think about it that way, and hopefully maybe to our listeners. All right, Zach, let's take a commercial break. What we like to know is you can promote anything you want. I know you have this book. You can welcome to talk about that. If you have any events coming up, tell us who your customer is so our listeners know if they fit into your avatar per se. But take a few minutes and let's kind of promote your company and whatever else you'd like to say about it.
Well, I appreciate that. So my journey that I'm on right now happened when I kind of exited the business a couple of years ago, moved down here to Hilton Head, got a pretty house on the beach, and after about a day or two of realizing I'm bored, I said, I got to do something, and so I wrote a book. And the book was really about my experience, specifically in the Marine Corps, and how I failed so miserably in boot camp because I wasn't tough like the kids that grew up with single family homes or grew up in the projects or the coal mines of West Virginia. And I started to look at what makes a warrior a warrior. And it's the samurai, it's the Spartans of these other areas. And then I started to look at entrepreneurs, Elon Musk, Walt Disney, Thomas Edison, and realized there's so much they have in common. And that came out with the book. So the book is called Warrior Entrepreneur: Leaderships from the Lessons from the Battlefield to the Boardroom. It's available on Amazon. You can also buy it directly from me at warriorentrepreneurbook.com. If you buy it from me directly, I will sign a copy for you. But Amazon is, and obviously Barnes and Noble, so that's an easy way to get it. That then got me into public speaking and doing some consulting, which is really what my passion is now. So my current website is warriorleader.us. And what we do is we take entrepreneurs and executives onto historic battlefields, and we have them actually follow the leaders or certain key protagonists at those battles. And we talk about what lessons did they learn and apply that you can apply to your business. So we do them in Gettysburg, we do them in Normandy. Big ones that we do are down here in Hilton Head. There's some great locations down here. We do half-day case study workshops, and then we also do scavenger hunts, where if you have a team of people and you want to get together, we have tablets we issue out, and you think of it as geocaching or the Amazing Race. You go to these different historic sites, you learn about the battles, and then you have to answer questions, do photo challenges. And my goal now is to really inspire corporate leaders and entrepreneurs. Our real target is employees over 100 people, and how we can do experiential leadership, because you learn so much more when you experience it rather than just seeing it or hearing it. We want to get you out of the office and onto the battlefield and learn lessons like strategy and strategic timing from Abraham Lincoln, where the Emancipation Proclamation was read, or learn about inclusion at the town of Mitchellville, which was the birthplace of freedom, where the newly freed slaves in South Carolina had their own village 2 years before the war was over, and how they worked with the Union soldiers down there.
That's very exciting. And maybe if you can send me some, if you have a marketing piece on that and those type of programs, will help promote that, because I think the experiential piece of what you're talking about is fantastic with the background of history. I never heard anybody doing that, so I'd love to help promote that for you. Okay, let's shift gears. Now, being in the military, that's obviously you face real live headwinds. Okay. But in business, we have live headwinds too. They look a little bit different. We have the enemies of inflation and labor shortages and supply chain shortages, and even political unrest that's changing the market conditions seems day by day. And then you have some even international wars that are going on that have an effect on us. So all that's happening now at the same time. So our listeners want to know what your thoughts are. Is this a time to is it time to grow? Is there opportunity? Is this the time to retreat? Is this time to sit on the sidelines? Tell me about how your perspective and how you're leading your company with that thought in mind.
So I think it's the absolute best time to be an entrepreneur is right now. And the reason why is exactly what you said. It's volatile and change. And anytime you have volatility and change, there creates opportunity. Now, the pessimist is going to look at and hide and retreat back into their little hole, or no offense to anybody, but into their cubicle. And for what I look at it is it creates opportunity. And with the advent of not just the internet, but now with AI and the way that AI can supercharge your research, supercharge your messages, where before I had to hire a very expensive PR and marketing team, I use AI now and it's producing material that's better than any firm that I spent tens and thousands of dollars on. So I would tell now is the time to do it. The also thing is the world is a very, very small place now because of the way that the internet has worked. And even with COVID, where it really, we were upset because my son was in high school at the time. He lost a lot of friends that he couldn't go out and hang with, but he gained this incredible international community of friends on his computer that are dear friends with him today that he met because he was spending so much time in front of the computer visiting with people and he couldn't do it outside. That creates an opportunity to create an international business right now because
Mm.
of the fact that the people are more comfortable meeting like you and I are meeting right now than in the past. We'd have to schedule time to have a cup of coffee and sit down and talk and coordinate schedules. And if you're in Chicago and I'm in Hilton Head, it just wouldn't happen. So I highly encourage people, now is the time.
Now's the time. Do you see any major trends? Again, not industry, it's hard because so many industry specifics, but are people going to a different hiring model? Are they using more consultants, coaches? Are there major shifts that you're seeing since you've been in business over all these years?
Yeah, so when I was leaving Eli Lilly back in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were really moving away from full-time employees and moving to contract employees. So, one of the greatest jobs was being a drug rep. You were almost guaranteed to have that job for 20 or 30 years. And what they started doing is hiring them contract, because the problem with in the drug company is your product's only patented for like 3 or 4 years. So at the
Mhm.
end of the patent, what are you going to sell? So they started hiring people on a contract basis that when that brand went off label, then your contract was terminated. So that's one of the trends. I love it because of the gig economy now. Places like Fiverr and Upwork and all these tremendous systems. I have access to graphic design, marketing, creative material from people in the Ukraine and Pakistan and Thailand. I'm outsourcing some of my call centers to Thailand that has absolutely perfect English. They work so hard and I feel guilty paying them what I pay them, but that for them, it's a huge wage.
Right.
That is some of the reasons why the culture and the environment today is so ripe for entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's that outsourcing is, as you said, I use a lot of people in different parts of the world, and it's hard because in the U.S. our pay rates sometimes are a lot higher, but to them, it's a livelihood. It really helps, and they really want to work. And sometimes over here in the U.S., sometimes our work ethic has been dropping off a little bit. So competition is a little bit wider out there. It's interesting. I just read an article about how we've always known employers have been talking about how employees are ghosting them. The word ghosting, not showing up for the job interview, not showing up for the hire. Corporations are doing that too to pad their image of looking like they're a growing company. So it's a real mess out there. And I said,
Well, I always have
be
a hard
the,
time.
be the, good.
I was going to say I have a hard time when people are so loyal to companies, and I get it. Loyalty is important, but that same company is going to draw a line through your name instead of underneath your name just as quickly as you blink. So I feel that, yes, it's been great that you worked for a company for 10, 15 years and there's loyalty there, but at the end of the day, they're going to cut your legs off just as quickly as you ghost them. It's called business. If they're doing a good job of meeting your needs and expectations, you would never ever ghost them. People are ghosting because of the failure of leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so accurate when you say it that way. Um, Very good. Now, just leave us on the last note here. What do you do? I know you're a military guy, so maybe you've already picked up all these disciplines that the average person doesn't, but you still have to get up on Monday morning, right? You still got to lead the charge. You still got to get yourself motivated, focused, get ready to fight the battle of all these market conditions. What do you do as an individual? Do you hire coaches? Do you have certain disciplines, things that you would like to share with our other leaders out there?
So I think there's a real connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit. They all work together. Exercise is vital. Not just from a physical health, but also from a mental health. It releases endorphins. It helps deal with stress. And I try to work out at least 4 or 5 times a week, and mainly because I like to eat a lot. So if I don't work out, I get even fatter than I am now, which is extremely overweight. But I use a group called F45. It's a national change. They do these 45-minute high intensity workouts. But the other thing is I've got a really great network of people there. So the first thing I tell people is, and for me, is you got to move, even if it's just taking a walk, doing something. You need to be around friends. Friends are absolutely important. Don't ever mistake quantity of quality. If you've got 2 or 3 great best friends, that's key. And those friends have to be outside of your family. There are times where, my wife and I just need to be with our friends. We're together all the time, and that's okay to be with your friends. So that's one area. The other thing is I like to travel, and we'll do family trips together, but my wife and I try to do one trip alone without the kids, without each other. For me, last year it was hiking through the Alps in Switzerland. Just recently, I did a 2 days of fly fishing in North Carolina just by myself, just to kind of collect my thoughts, and that has been really helpful. She loves Paris. That's pretty much where she goes every time. And I try to go with her, and she's like, "Nope, this is maybe she has a boyfriend over there. Who knows?" But that's her thing is she loves Paris.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, it's interesting. After this, I'm going out to have lunch with a friend who I've been friends with for over 50 years. So I wholeheartedly agree that my wife always says you're a better person when you come home after you spend time with your friends. So I think there's a value there. Zach, this has been fun. You have a wealth of knowledge. Obviously, we can't capture that in a 30-minute podcast, but we can capture a lot of that in your book. So once again, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be on this show, sharing your wisdom to our listeners. How can they get a hold of you if they would like to know more about your services?
Sure. So LinkedIn I'm very active on that. I will tell you though, the LinkedIn lately has been hard to get in touch with people because of just the volume of messages. You can always reach out to me directly. I'm a big fan of, I never answer my phone, but I always return a text. So my phone number is 513-235-6383. And then you can always visit my website, warriorleader.us, to learn more about some of the experience-based leadership and coaching and consulting and team building programs that my team and I do.
That's great. And we will capture all of that in the show notes, which will be on all podcast platforms and YouTube as well in about 2 to 3 weeks. And Zach, I can't say thank you enough for your services in the military. I am able to sit here in my free country because of what you've done. So I'm extremely grateful for that, and for you taking your time as an executive CEO, founder of a company, to share your wisdom with our listeners.
Well, thank you for honoring the sacrifice of my brothers and sisters, and thank you for helping pursue the American dream of entrepreneurship.
Very good. Hope you have a great day.
Rich LeBrun here. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, Get It Done, Entrepreneurs. If you are a successful business owner who would like to be on this program, please visit us at rlebrun.com/podcast and fill out the form, and we will reach out to you. If you got something out of this interview, would you share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show. Include the hashtag GetItDoneEntrepreneurs. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, rlebrun.com, or follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time.